Who of you is a neighbor? Please be seated. We spend a lot of time, I think, as Christians, asking the question, who is our neighbor? And we usually ask it when we're trying to include a group of excluded people. Who's our neighbor? Oh, it's this group, it's that group. Yesterday, at Pride, we had the opportunity to be a neighbor to groups of people who have generally been excluded. And it was a powerful day. I, for the first time at Pride, decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different. And so I put some chrism, the oil that we have in the back, I put it in a cleaned out hand sanitizer little carrier bottle that had a little carabinger on it so I could carry it around easily. I put on my rainbow stole, I do have one tucked away, and I stood in front of our booth and I hawked blessings, a little bit like I was hawking raspberries. I don't know if you were a fan of musicals, but you know that scene in Oliver, ripe, strawberries ripe? I stood out there, blessings, anybody want a blessing? I didn't really think all that many people would take me up on it. I was shocked at how many people stopped for a blessing. Sometimes they would stop and kind of look with kind of this puzzled look and like, what is she saying? And they'd kind of confer. I could see a conversation and somebody would sort of hesitantly come forward. Sometimes people made a beeline. I could tell that they were headed straight for me from all the way across the walkway. Sometimes I actually just asked people, they kind of made eye contact, and I said, would you like a blessing? And you can't say no to that kind of thing. Some people came up for a blessing and then said, can I have a hug? And I had some really long hugs. So often, friends, we define being a neighbor as a group that is welcome or not welcome. Neighbor is about a group with whom we have some kind of affinity, right? They are literally in our neighborhood. They're on our block. Or maybe they are people that have been in our community for a long time. They're people that we know, right? Turn around, look at one another. These are your neighbors. Neighbors as defined by their participation in this community. Or maybe our neighbors are people who are the same ethnicity as us, the same race as us. Somehow we share something in common. And so we spend a lot of time talking about who is our neighbor. But that isn't the question that Jesus answers. Have you noticed that in this text? The lawyer, trying to kind of get himself off the hook, because Jesus gave him this kind of kindergarten answer that every good Jew knows for what it is to inherit eternal life, what it is to work out and seek one's salvation, love God, love your neighbor with your whole heart, mind, body, soul, all that. Kindergarten answer, Jesus says, well, go and do likewise. And this lawyer says, oh, no, who is my neighbor? And Jesus tells a story that we all are familiar with. We are familiar with the priest and the Levite who walk by, and the Samaritan, the enemy of the Jews, the man who is culturally and religiously different and other, stopping and caring for someone who is beaten on the side of the road. Jesus does not say the man beaten on the side of the road was the neighbor. He forces this lawyer to admit that the neighbor is the one who shows mercy. Jesus isn't asking who is our neighbor. Jesus is saying we are called to be neighbors. We're called to be neighbors to everybody, in the same way that God is a neighbor to everybody. God is literally the one who, having breathed creation into existence, then comes alongside us through the prophets and the stories of the people of God, comes alongside us in the person of Jesus, who from the opening of his ministry declares that his ministry is a physical embodiment of the commitment of God to come alongside those who are sick and blind and hungry and naked and afraid and imprisoned. God is the one who comes alongside us as our neighbor, and because we are made in God's image, we are called to come alongside everybody, without exception. It isn't about who is our neighbor, it's about whether we will be a neighbor to those around us. And friends, being a neighbor is hard. I felt a little bit of awkwardness. I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I really just want to stand out there hawking blessings? It took me a little bit to kind of actually get up the nerve to do it. And then when I started, it just worked. It just worked. But I had that own internal, I know I'm a priest. I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but still, it feels really awkward. It feels really weird. Friends, so often we don't want to be a neighbor to those around us because it feels awkward. We don't know how to start that conversation with someone who is different than us. And we register difference just like that, friends. Hair's a little bit different, the clothing's a little bit different, maybe their age or their body or their movement or their tone of voice or their accent is just a little bit different. And because we live in a world that so defines us by who we belong to and who we do not belong to, the moment we come across somebody that is different, our body tenses up a little bit. Our shoulders go up to our ears. Our voice is pitched just a little bit higher. We get a tightness in our chest. Friends, just like the priest and the Levite, we walk by people on the streets all the time. We walk right by them, making no sound, perhaps avoiding eye contact, because we don't want to have the awkward conversation. Maybe we're afraid that that person sitting there with a sign asking for change will say something rude to us. They will express their anger at us, and boy, friends, we want to avoid conflict. We don't like conflict. We also don't like having to say no. We know that that person on the street, surely they're going to ask us for something, and you know what? Saying no just feels so awkward, and it makes us feel sort of unhospitable and unkind and not particularly generous, and we don't like to be reminded of that on a regular basis, so maybe we cross to the other side, or we don't make eye contact, or we pretend not to hear. Friends, I do this all the time. This isn't a you, this is an us thing. Sometimes I just don't want to have to say no. I don't want to have to explain that I don't have cash in my pocket. I don't want to have a conversation with someone who's upset and angry and cold and tired and who wants something from me that I cannot give. Being a neighbor is hard, and sometimes we just cross to the other side to avoid having to deal with a situation that feels overwhelming to us. Maybe it's overwhelming because we don't understand this person's strange gender and why they keep changing it. Maybe it's overwhelming to us because we don't understand the accent of the person. They've come from somewhere else. And maybe it's overwhelming to us because we just don't want to be revealed as not terribly generous and not sharing that $1 or $5 we have We don't have time to buy a cup of coffee. Friends, we do this all the time. Being a neighbor takes learning. It's not actually something that comes natural to us, especially in a world where we are educated not to be neighbors. Our world and our society tells us that you are a neighbor if you are a citizen, if you live in the right neighborhood, if you speak in the right language, if you wear the right clothing, if you have a job, if you've gotten the right education. It doesn't tell us how to be a neighbor to those around us. We need to learn. And so at Christ Church, we're going to begin to learn. We are instituting a series of conversations and practices around what it means to be safe and to care for those who are all around us. As Christians, we don't get to decide who should or shouldn't be around us. We get to decide if we're going to be a neighbor to those who God puts in our path. And so we are going to engage in a series of conversations and practices to learn to care for our unhoused neighbors. Because it's hard, friends. I have had to learn how to let my shoulders drop and take a deep breath before I express my opinion about the things in front of the doorways here. I have had to learn to say, hey, Phoenix, good morning. How are you? It's time to get up. You're welcome to go sit on the benches. I've had to practice those phrases, and I've had to practice it in a tone of voice that does not indicate the fact that I really don't want to deal with this right now. I have had to learn that disease is not communicable from a dirty blanket. I have had to learn that when someone is irritated and tired, maybe I need to give them 5 minutes or 10 minutes to wake up because they probably didn't actually sleep most of the night, because the night on the streets is actually the least quiet part of the day. I've had to learn how to be patient. I've had to learn how to control my own reaction, especially when I can't offer very much. I would be delighted to offer a drinking fountain. I would be delighted to say, yeah, come on in and have a seat in a warm and dry place. You want to read some of the books in the library? Come right on in. Yeah, you know what? We've got hot water for your cup of soup. I would love to be able to do those things, and I can't. I would love to be able to say, of course I have a bed for you. Of course you can come in and sleep, but I can't. We can't. We cannot do all of those things. Sometimes being a neighbor is learning the things we can do and the things that we can't do. But what we can do is learn to speak with kindness and grace to those who are around us. And so that's what we're going to do coming up in July. Somebody from the diocese is going to come and have a conversation with us, a workshop, where not only do we learn about the reality of houselessness in our region, but actually how to have those conversations. Friends, role play helps a lot. We're going to have a conversation later on in the year with someone who runs a ministry called Retreat Home, where they welcome people transitioning out of houselessness into housing into people's homes. They provide the support, and they invite all of us to share a room if we have one. We're going to have a conversation with a pastor down at First Methodist, Common Good Tacoma, where they do a lot of work with the unhoused. And it's an important conversation, friend, because the city of Tacoma is shutting down 400 beds. So when you walk by someone on the street and you think, well, there's a shelter for them, there is not. There are simply not shelter beds available. We are reducing them. When you wonder why someone is eating yet another bunch of crap junk food, it's because it's what's cheap and available. And friends, If you have been paying any attention, food is no longer being distributed. The federal government is no longer providing funds for the basic necessities of people's lives. Maybe it's time for us to think about having a dinner where people can just come and eat together, where we can be a neighbor with what little we have or the abundance that we have. Friends, we have enough, but we will learn how to be neighbors by practicing compassion and safety, by learning how we are already afraid and our instinct is to walk on the other side of the road. And yet Jesus is abundantly clear. To be a disciple of Jesus is to be a neighbor. So friends, if you're afraid of being a neighbor, if you are afraid of having that difficult conversation, come and learn. By your baptismal vow, come and learn. This is what it is to be a Christian. Come and learn how to be a neighbor. Because here's the things, friends. As a priest, one of the things that I have the privilege to do is offer a blessing to those around. But friends, we believe in the priesthood of all believers. And every single one of you may bless the lives of those around you. Not because they're like you, but because that is who God created you to be. A person who is a blessing to all of creation. So come and learn how to do that with us over the next 6 months as we engage in this conversation so that we do not need to cross to the other side of the road. Amen.